Today we are standing on Alton Road in Miami Beach, and as you guys can see, it is one of the busiest streets in Miami Beach, definitely not quiet. And this house right behind me sold in March of 2021 for $1.1 million. Fast forward to June of 2022, they relisted the house for sale for $2,595,000. Then they decided to drop the price in October to 2.45. Still no buyers, guys. Currently today, as of January, the new price is $2,250,000. It's been listed for 245 days. No one's buying it. Let me know, would you guys pay $2,250,000 for a house on a street this busy? It's crazy, guys. There is not a quiet moment out here, and it's like this almost all hours of the day. It's basically one of the main arteries of Miami Beach here. Extremely busy. It's so busy that I don't even want to do my video over here. I am going to cross and head over to North Bay Road on the other side, where it's much quieter for us to talk. Sounds lovely, right? Now today's video is really going to be stories of winners and losers, because there is just some fascinating things to report on when it comes to the housing market and with money in general. And starting off with this housing market report, I want to thank one of my channel members, Nick, for sending me this story about how badly iBuyers have been getting pummeled since the housing market has been shifting into a downturn. Now this story focuses on Phoenix because Phoenix is one of the areas that is getting hit quite hard with this housing crash so far, and it's one of the areas where Opendoor bought a ton of real estate during the run-up of home prices. And when I read this, I just had to laugh, and I'm sure you guys will get a kick out of this as well. The first story is about a home flipper in Phoenix, who's actually a mom and pop home flipper. He's not one of the iBuyers or anything like that. And this is a success story from him on how he's been able to make it in the flipping business while these iBuyers are getting crushed. And check out what happened to him. He sold a townhouse to Opendoor for $265,000 in spring of 2022. So roughly a year ago. And they paid $30,000 over asking price for that property from him and basically outbid a few regular buyers. So, of course, in the fashion of Opendoor, they bought the house over asking price, and then they quickly turned it around, put it back on the market for sale, and they've had to go through several price reductions. And as of today, in January, they're now asking $218,000 for that same townhouse that they paid $265,000 for. And it's to the point where the guy that sold it to him, that flipped the property to begin with, is looking at buying it back for an even bigger discount. I mean, have you ever heard of something so insane, guys? This home flipper actually offered Opendoor $180,000 under a new LLC name, so that way they wouldn't realize it's the same person that they bought it from about a year ago, because chances of them accepting the offer would be basically zero, probably out of spite and out of financial pain, really. And so Opendoor counteroffered him at $208,000. He didn't accept the counteroffer, and it's still just sitting there right now. So it'll be interesting to see if this guy is going to be able to pick up this house at a huge loss thanks to Opendoor, basically profit off of their huge mistakes. There was another couple in Phoenix that did even better than this home flipper when it comes to Opendoor. Check this out. They bought a home in November of 2022 from Opendoor, and they paid $485,000 for this property, okay? But back in June of 2022, Opendoor paid $646,000 for this house. Insanity. This couple got a $180,000 discount in the span of about 5 months, guys. I mean, to me, that's basically unheard of. I've never heard of somebody getting such a great deal in such a short period of time, and it's almost shocking that Opendoor would even let the house go at this price. But obviously, they way overpaid for this property, just like so many other ones, because look at this. In Phoenix alone, Opendoor lost money on 89% of the homes that they sold in the fourth quarter of 2022. So that's almost all of them that they lost money on. Only 11% of their flips were profitable, which is why their stock price is in the toilet right now. They lost about $58,000 on average per house, and their average loss per house was about 12% off of what they paid for it. I mean, how ridiculous is that? And good for them, right? Good for them for thinking a computer can just buy up all the real estate and know what everything is worth and predict the future. And then you got this regular home flipper that, sold this property to Opendoor in the beginning, and on average, he's selling his properties about 20% above what he paid for them. And if you guys want to know the secret to that, it's not really a giant secret. The reason why this guy, the regular mom and pop home flipper, is able to do so well in a market where Opendoor is getting crushed is because they're a person and they can think. They're not using a computer to understand the market. They also would actually renovate the property. Who knew? When you buy a property and you want to flip it for a profit, usually that's going to involve, some work, not just slapping some lipstick on it and saying, here you go, it's worth more now. Not only that, but this guy looked for under market value deals, like I tell you guys to do all the time. And he would buy distressed properties that might have liens on it, people behind on the mortgage, things like that, where they're willing to let it go at a discount just to get rid of it. So anybody who wants to find a good deal in 2023, you should start hunting down those Opendoor properties, because these guys are desperate right now and just want to get rid of everything. So I'd be looking into buying one of their houses if you really want to get the deal of a lifetime this year.
Holy moly, get a load of this place. They bought this place back in December of 2021 for $1.9 million. 1 month later, turned around and listed it for rent for $22,500, and now it has been over 1 year that this house has been sitting empty, no renters. The new rental price is $17,500.
And speaking of winners and losers, right now one of the top turnoffs for both men and women is a potential dating partner who has financial troubles. Oh, what do you know? Interesting timing, considering that we're entering the recession and people are not doing so well right now. And what are people looking for? Financial responsibility. That's what they're looking for in their future life partner. According to this survey, baby boomers and Gen Xers found anybody that has any sort of debt to be a big turnoff to them, both men and women. And with millennials and Gen Zers, where they tended to be more forgiving for people that have debt, considering that they kind of understand the struggle of today, that life is a lot tougher now in terms of how much everything costs. And also, it's no surprise that the younger generations, Gen Z and millennials, have the highest proportion of student loan debt as well. They'd be kind of shooting themselves all in the foot if this was like a big turning point for them where, hey, I'm not gonna date you if you have any debt. But it turns out the dynamic with money and what is deemed a turnoff is a little bit different for men and women. So it turns out that 31% of women found that irresponsible spending was a deal breaker, and for men, 28% of them said that financial illiteracy was a deal breaker. So women don't like to see men just flash their cash and throw it all away on garbage and BS. And men don't like a girl that doesn't know anything when it comes to how to spend a dollar or understand what a dollar's worth. I think that's what it comes down to here. And it turns out one of the biggest deal breakers and turnoffs for millennial daters is credit card debt. And this is something we've been hammering here on the channel time and time again, and people are going into record amounts of credit card debt right now. So guys and girls, if you're looking to get a date, you better get out of that credit card debt, because not only is your financial future dependent on it, probably the future of your love life depends on it too. And if you think all that's bad, well, it gets worse, because turns out if you make basically less than 30K a year, you're basically looked at as a pariah and nobody wants to date you guys. And I'm sorry to say it like that, but that's what this data is telling us. But on the upside, The median salary across the US as of 2021 was about $37,522, so you should be good there. As long as you make over that 30K amount and you're not in debt, you should be able to get some sort of date. And here's the interesting thing too. Even though millennials and Gen Zers are okay with you having student loan debt, it comes to a point and up to a limit. Besides the credit card debt being a huge deal breaker for people, it turns out if you have more than $28,000 in student loan debt, you're also way less likely to get a date because of that as well. The younger generation sees student loan debt as somewhat as a common thing or a necessity, but too much of it can also be a deal breaker because it probably says something like, hey, I probably borrowed more than I should have, or I went to a school that was just too expensive that I really couldn't afford. And it's probably just a big frown upon your future ability to handle your finances responsibly. Of course, unless you went for something very expensive, like you guys were telling me in my money video the other day about how doctors have to spend like $500,000 in student loan debt, crazy stuff like this. So there probably are some exceptions, but these are just generalizations, and I thought it was funny. And it turns out that the amount of debt that's a deal breaker for both men and women is a little bit different, which is understandable since men are more aggressive when it comes to hunting women down. So men are willing to accept debt up to about $31,000 for a woman, but women, on the other hand, are probably not going to be interested if a man has $22,000 of debt or more. So there's a pretty big discrepancy there. And as funny as all this sounds, it is important to discuss these things before really, getting into deep with someone, because they just have all sorts of fascinating information from this study. And it turns out about 40% of the couples that they surveyed, they argue regularly about spending habits. So if you get to know someone, you start dating for a while, you're together for a couple years, but you don't really know how that person spends their money or how financially responsible they are, how much debt they have, this can become a huge problem later in your relationship and ultimately end up wasting a lot of your life. And even scarier than that, 1/3 of the couples that they surveyed never even discussed their finances together until after they were married. Imagine that. Imagine marrying a huge financial problem that you're going to have to deal with now for the rest of your life unless you want to get a divorce right after getting hitched. Sounds like a nightmare to me. And it's no big surprise that 1/3 of the people that were surveyed wish they would have talked about finances sooner at the beginning of their relationship until they got too deep into it and had to go through a divorce or a breakup or anything like that. This is all pretty fascinating stuff, guys. I mean, we know one of the main reasons people split up is because of money troubles. And a couple lessons to be learned from this: no money, no honey. You got debt, forget about it. And you know how we're always talking about how we haven't seen this much change in home prices in 40 years. We haven't seen interest rates this high in, 15 years. We haven't seen X whatever statistic in however many years. It's been so long, right? And since we were just talking about money and debt, the credit card debt right now is absolutely astonishing. There's about $1.1 trillion in total credit card debt just in the United States, and that's the most since 1986. And the change in outstanding credit card debt has increased by $79.2 billion, which is also the largest increase since 1986. And the charge-off rate at $15.1 billion, the amount that's not being paid back, is the highest since 1986. And when you look at that and say, wow, that was like 36, 37 years ago, it's kind of insane that things are reaching this point this many years later. And it's taken this long for it to get this bad once again. Just a sign of the times. And another sign of the times right now is the dollar is in trouble. And I mean, we're talking about how the value of the dollar could change significantly if things keep moving in the direction that they are right now. Because already the dollar has lost about 8% of its value just in the last quarter of 2022. And right now, OPEC has agreed to accept Chinese currency as payment for their oil versus the US dollar. And this can really have an impact on how much our dollar is worth, not only here domestically, but across the world. And essentially, the easiest way to think about this is before, all of the oil sold from OPEC needed to be sold in US dollars. So this really helped the US dollar keep its value being the world's reserve currency, because this major commodity that every single civilized country needs was traded in dollars up until now. Well, now that that's starting to change, the value of the dollar can go down significantly from this, because if many countries don't need as many dollars as they used to, they can buy oil in Chinese currency instead of American currency. This can really cause problems for us, and it's one of the main reasons that I've been saying for a while now that the US should be looking at going back on a gold standard. Part of the reason that this is happening is because when we raise our interest rates as fast as we did, which is arguably faster than many other central banks across the world, what we do is we artificially devalue their currencies even more than ours. So we make everything else more expensive for the rest of the world in order to make it cheaper here in the US. And probably a lot of the countries that are affected by this are just getting tired, and it's to the point where they're willing to trade oil in a separate currency. But if the US would smarten up and start looking at, hey, you know, we can't just be printing trillions and trillions of dollars and screwing everybody over with our exchange rates and expect the world to love us. Instead, maybe we should actually have our dollar be backed up by something like we did in the past, and have it actually be worth something. And maybe they'll actually want to use our currency instead of try to find ways to get away from it. Ever think about that? And it's kind of ironic too, right, that this is happening, especially since we just went over this whole dating scenario, because what's happening is the rest of the world is essentially starting to divorce the United States. And what did we say earlier? Two big takeaways: no money, no honey, you got debt, forget about it. That's what these other countries are saying to us right now. You guys owe everybody too much money, okay? You don't know how to spend your money responsibly. We thought you guys were cool, and all this and that, and it's turning out that that's not the case. So we need to find ways to make life cheaper for us, because it's starting to hurt. Oh, and by the way, just to make matters worse, if they don't do anything about this and the US decides to just keep printing money and ignoring what other countries are doing when it comes to trading in Chinese currency instead of American currency, if they don't start paying attention to this, another side effect that we're going to have here is it's going to make inflation worse again, guys. Because when we have more dollars here in circulation, that ups the money supply, which makes everything more expensive. So this is bad news. If you are an American living in the United States, you should be worried about this, because I certainly am. And honestly, guys, it's one of the reasons why I buy gold and silver. That's real money. It's worth the same amount of money across the entire world. You can take one piece of gold or one piece of silver to any country in the world and get paid the equal value of what you would get paid anywhere else. So for example, if an ounce of gold here in the US is worth $1,900, you could take it to Japan and you know, their currency is worth 30,000 Japanese dollars. That's what they'll give you. You understand? And that's why gold and silver is real money, and all the rest of this stuff is just Uncle Drake's magic show going on behind the curtains. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video, and if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.